General American culture seems to have this large obsession with racism, and much of this is due to America's history, whether it be slavery, Jim Crow, and even Japanese internment camps, which was implemented by everybody's favorite progressive president. These were times in which the government essentially mandated and endorsed actual acts of racism. And because we have people that are still alive that lived through those harsh times, the topic is still widely discussed. The one thing that many people can agree on is that racism is bad, more specifically towards non-whites. But the narrative these days has gotten a little silly. Racism is simply the belief that race is the primary determinant of traits and capacities, and these differences makes racists, superior or inferior. But we've seen the definition of racism become very vague these days. People have added aspects like institutional power to basically suggest that the only way you can be a racist is if you are in position of power. We've also gotten to a point to where things that aren't even racist is considered racist, especially when we talk about demographics and statistics. There are folks that seriously believe that the concept of equality in some type of result is an actual thing that can exist. So anytime there is any sort of disparity in a human affair among races, well, something must be racist. This assumes that equal results are an actual thing, and there's absolutely nothing, and I mean nothing out there that can attribute to any sort of disparity, even though disparity should be an expectation. Of course, racism actually exists, but the fact that I even have to put that there as a disclaimer lets you know how insane this conversation has gotten. People are foaming at the mouth at racism, people are rushing to be victims of it, and people are going out of their way to virtue signal to the oblivion to prove that they're not racist. But there's one thing that people seem to not take into consideration when we're discussing whether or not racism is this massive problem, and that is their own life experiences. Contrary to the narrative that's constantly being perpetuated, this territorial monopoly that we know as the United States of America is like the most racially diverse country in existence. Inevitably, the average individual has all sorts of peaceful interactions with people of other races. Interactions with people that you consider your friends. You may go to the store and purchase goods from a person that is of another race. You may go to a restaurant and the waiter is a person of another race. For example, I'm in a band that has a black guy fronting it. We also have 3 people of Hispanic descent and a person of an Irish background. And we perform in front of beautiful faces of all different races. Now, why does that experience have to be negated by isolated events of racism? Why does 200 guys in Charlottesville that the media hype up get to overshadow my everyday experiences with other races that are peaceful and cordial? They don't. But people need dragons to slay, and that's why they much rather reach to find racism than actually acknowledge the millions of other interactions. Now, those who actually need racism for the narrative will continue to say things like slavery and Jim Crow has its lingering effects. That's the easy way of basically saying they want to continue to discuss it to this degree, even though there's so much evidence out there that shows that it's a completely different time period. But you know what happens when you do decide to dramatize racism? You downplay the actual volatile acts of racism that still take place to this day. It starts sounding like the little boy who cried wolf. And some of you narcissists are rather fraud activists that would much rather have your egos massaged instead of nullifying aggression-backed racism. Cut the gimmick.